Hello folks and welcome to my self-pub/indie TBR for 2024. Now, this is by no means all the self-pub books that I'll get to this year. I still have a lot more that I really want to dive into, but these are the ARCs slash review copies, both physical and digital, where authors have reached out to me or I've reached out to them, expressing my interest in their work. And so this is where my priorities will lie for at least the first half of the year. So there's a fair amount of books to get through here. So I thought this would just be a good idea to show you what I have planned for at least the first half of the year. And maybe if any of these books spark your interest, you can check them out. I will have the links to each book in the description below, so you can check them out if you want to. So I'll begin with the arcs I have on the list. There are 3 here. First up is A Sway with Valour's Wrath by Daniel Babatola. Now, this is an epic fantasy novella, and the story centers around following a lonely king on his revenge journey towards slaying the man who took everything he holds dear away from him. So it sounds incredibly unique, sounds intriguing, and I will try to get to this fairly soon because pre-orders for this novella end on March 3rd of 2024. So that is advanced reader copy number 1, and number 2 on the list is In the Shadow of Their Dying by Anna Smith Spark and Michael R. Fletcher. Now, this is another novella. It's a grimdark fantasy slash horror novella, and these 2 authors are some of the most prominent authors out there in terms of grimdark and dark fantasy stuff. I mean, these are 2 authors that have been high on my list for very long, and I want to get to their work, all of their work. So I've heard a lot of great things about this novella already, and it promises to be an epic and intense read. The premise follows an enslaved demon who is tasked with protecting a king or something of the sort. So it sounds pretty awesome. And the release date for this novella is March 19th of 2024, so I will absolutely get to it before then and put up a review. And third on the list is The Storm Beneath the World by Michael R. Fletcher. So I've touched on this author already. He's well known for his grimdark work. I mean, if you've heard of Manifest Illusions, that's one of his most popular series. He's known for writing really dark, gritty stuff. This is naturally one that I had to get the arc for. So what we have here is an insectile race of creatures, and I know they have some sort of conflict, but basically they fly around from treetops or they stay very elevated because the landscape upon this world is like a hellish landscape. It's filled with fire and lava and whatnot. So that sounds interesting enough. I know there's a lot of conflict that happens, political stuff between these insectile race creature things. So I'll definitely be getting to that one as soon as well, because the release date for that is April 5th of 2024. So moving on to the physical copies, which I've received. The first one up is Crown Prince by W.D. Kilpack III. This is book 1 in the New Blood saga. Now, I've already read this one. I finished it at the beginning of the year, and this was the biggest surprise for me so far. I absolutely loved this book. So what we have here is a very dark, epic fantasy story following a very intimate cast of characters. And the way things unfold, I mean, you're thrown into the thick of the action right from the beginning. So it sinks you in right from the beginning. And the way events unfold, the way characters come together, you cannot help but keep flipping the pages. And by the end of this, I was so invested, I felt so intimate with these characters that I had to find out what happens next. So after finishing this, I immediately ordered book 2, which is Order of Light. And I will absolutely be making time for this within the next month or so. I need to find out what happens. It's such a good story, such a dark but good story, very good character work. You get really close with these characters, and you can't help but wanting to know what happens next. So this is on the docket. So Order of Light by W.D. Kilpack III. Next up on the list, and one that I am eagerly anticipating, is the Fallen Light series by H.C. Newell. So, I have all 3 books here. First up is Curse of the Fallen. This is book 1 in Fallen Light, and from what I hear about this series, it's a dark, epic fantasy, which I already love, but we got a very beautiful map here. We explore all corners of the world. You know, we follow multiple POVs. Apparently, there's some very humorous dialogue here. There's monsters, there's magic, there's everything you could ever love in an epic fantasy story. After that is The Forbidden Realms, Book 2 in the Fallen Light. Now I've heard this one is a lot heavier on the action scenes, a lot more action in this one, which I'm happy to read about. So Dark Fantasy book number 2 in the series. Very much looking forward to this. Now, after that is book 3, Shadows of Nyn'Dira, where I know we explore another part of the map. Yeah, there's an entirely new portion of the map here, and we get like a close-up. I am just astounded at the world building, the level of world building here. So it's going to be really interesting following these characters. I know that they have their own distinct, unique voice and their own traits and all that. Many different races, different cultures. I'm looking forward to fully immersing myself in the Fallen Light series and giving a review and talking about it, hopefully raving about it. We'll see how it goes. And I know there is a novella called The Banished, which takes place between books 2 and 3. If I end up enjoying the series a lot, I'm absolutely going to get to that novella as well. Next up is The Exile of Zanzibar by Daniel Maidman. Now, this is book 1 in the Railroad to Zanzibar series, and that is just an absolutely gorgeous cover. I mean, the color scheme, the whole angelic vibe you get here, very well done. Now, what this is an epic fantasy, but I'm guessing there's going to be a bit of a historical fiction vibe to this as well, based off of the synopsis. What we have is a character who is thrown back in time, so there's time travel, and quickly she finds herself in the middle of political conflict set in Bronze Age Florence. So that sounds incredibly unique and interesting. It'll be interesting to witness, the politics of that time, see how closely accurate, if at all, it is, or if it's more on the fantasy aspect. With I know there's monsters and myth and magic and whatnot in this as well, so it'll be cool to see how that is tied in, how it's incorporated, along with the whole Bronze Age Florence setting. And the last physical copy I have is Rise of Dresca by Tim McKay. Now this is book 1 in the Draymere Chronicle, and what we have here is a pretty quick looking epic fantasy read. Now I know we have themes here of hope, of good versus evil, and multiple coming of age stories. I know there's multiple POVs, if I'm not mistaken. But I can liken this to Aragon and Del Toro Quest series, if you're familiar with those. This, I know, has some inspiration behind that. So that's what you can expect here. So I'm very much looking forward to this. It is, again, pretty quick read, so I'll be able to get through it in no time. But I do know the author, Tim McKay, is in the middle of basically reworking this. He'll tie together books 1 and 2, so he'll republish this, a newer version with books 1 and 2 combined, along with many additions and a refinement to the story. So I'm very much looking forward to when that comes out. But in the meantime, I will absolutely dive into this and give my thoughts. So next up are all the digital copies that I've received, and first on the list is The Year Before the End by Vidar Hogstad. Now this is book 1 in the Sovereign Earth series, a planned 6-book series. This is a sci-fi work. I've been meaning to dive into a lot more sci-fi, so seems like a great place to start. And the synopsis here, we follow a crew that uncovers a conspiracy regarding a newly discovered alien race, I believe. And apparently it's bound to shake up the whole solar system. So very high stakes here. Like I said, I want to get into more sci-fi, so this is where I'll be starting with that. Next up is A Wizard's Dream by... I'm gonna butcher this name, I apologize in advance. Rvoje Butkovic. I'm so sorry. But it's A Wizard's Dream, and this is a fantasy novel focusing on a wizard's apprentice. I know it seems like very much like a coming-of-age story, but I know that there are some very deep themes within this. This is very much your unconventional fantasy story. It's got some very poetic prose, very deep themes, and it's meant to be a very slow-paced read that provides many moments of contemplation and you know, thought-provoking ideas and whatnot. So definitely one that I'll have to take my time with, but I'm eager to get into more work like that. I've been reading Malzahn and absolutely love it. I would think that that's very similar to what I'm hearing here. So, A Wizard's Dream by Butkovic. And next up is Violence and Vigilance by David T. List. This is book 1 in Teresia Untamed. Now, this is, overall, it's a story about survival, I know that much. It's very much on the dark, epic fantasy side of things, maybe even leaning to grimdark from everything I've heard. It is likened to First Law and Red Rising, from what the author has said, so very much grimdark vibes here, which you're speaking my language, so very excited to get to this. Like I said, we got themes of survival, we've got some very dark humor, I know that much. It's an expansive world, and I know that there are some pretty damaged characters that we're following here. Next up is Gilded Kingdoms, 7th Born by C.J. Irvin. Now this is another epic fantasy / historical fiction, and I know that it involves a lot of political scheming between many different factions and peoples. What we have a lot of intrigue in here, a lot of warmongering talk, and a lot of betrayal and whatnot, that as well. I know the author has hearkened it to similar to A Song of Ice and Fire, but without the dragons. But I am excited to try this out. The author reached out to me very kindly and made it sound like a very interesting read, so I will absolutely get to that. And finally we have Tempus by Thomas Botea. So this is a sci-fi novella. This is the author's debut work, so I'm very interested to check out his writing chops, see what he's got in store. I know that this is the introduction to a vast series he's writing set in the world of Cascadia. So this is our introduction. I'm very interested to see what we have. What it is it's a fast-paced story following a time traveler who is being hunted down by a cruel assassin in the distant future. So, sounds very intriguing, and it is the other sci-fi that I'm very looking forward to here on this list. But that is the list, those are the priorities that I'm going to be setting for at least the first half of 2024. Again, by no means all the self-pub that I'll get to. There's definitely a lot more that I want to get to. I'm excited to get to Gunmetal Gods. I backed the Kickstarter for that, so the Ultimate Edition should arrive around June, July. I want to get to that as well. So many others to talk about, but that will be in another video. So that's it for this list. Again, I will have all the links to all these books in the description below. You can check them out if they piqued your interest. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning into this video, and I will see you next time.